Hey everybody, thanks for checking out this week's episode of My First Sketch at myfirstsketch.com. I'm Josh Hyam. As always, feel free to subscribe to the show on iTunes or on SoundCloud and get it automatically. You can also listen on the Stitcher app. You can like the podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/myfirstsketch. You can email me at josh@myfirstsketch.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at myfirstsketch. We are about a week away from Philly Sketch Fest, the Sketch Comedy Film Festival, followed by 4 nights of live comedy. Tickets are available at ticketfly.com. The Sketch Comedy Film Festival is Wednesday night at the PFS Roxy, and then 2 nights at the Playground of the Adrian, a night at the Ruba Club, and then a night at Underground Arts. More information about the shows and performers can be found at phillysketchfest.com, and if you have a free night and want to help out, there's a link to sign up to volunteer there as well. It's taken 48 episodes and many tries and emails, but I finally have the first former member of the group I used to be in, Judo Range. So today's guest is Chris McGrail, a former member of Judo Range and currently a member of Rodeo. The sketch he brought with him is called Cyberknights. McGrail plays Steve, the reluctant member of the Cyberknights. I play the narrator and Gimbor, who is the leader of the Cyberknights. And Julia Selly plays Madradon, the evil villain. So let's go to the sketch. The 1,000-year-old wizard, Gimbor, chose 5 extraordinary high schoolers to fight the forces of evil known as the Cyberknights. Cyberknights, roll call.
Randy. Bobby.
Leon. Susan.
Steve.
Steve, is there something wrong? You seem a little down in the dumps.
Well, it's just that I feel like I don't belong on the team.
What are you talking about? Each of you were chosen by me with the guidance of the moon god Akra.
Yeah, but everyone else on the team was well prepared. They were all karate black belts even before you chose them. I mean, I have asthma. I feel like you chose me by accident. Now you don't want to admit your mistake.
Gimbor looks around shiftily. That's not true. Whenever we have to fight the forces of the Dark Lord Mamadron, who has the most important job of guarding the castle? Steve!
Yeah, me and a giant robot hawk with laser fists.
But you are the spirit of the team. And don't you have the greatest sacred weapon? Everybody, pull out your sacred weapon. Each team member excitedly thrusts their weapon in the air after it's called, except for Steve. Randy, the longsword. Susan, the dagger. Bobby, the double axe. Leon, the bow. And Steve gets a handgun.
Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. They all have close combat weapons that take years of training. I have a pistol. You obviously don't think I have any fighting ability.
I just don't want you to get hurt.
Oh, don't coddle me.
Madrigan enters with his henchmen. Fighting ensues. Steve gets punched in the stomach and convulses on the ground. Madrigan trips over Steve and falls on his own sword.
How did you know my only weakness was to be impaled on my own sword? I have been killed by Steve, the mightiest of all warriors. Damn you, Steve.
Hey, Chris.
Hello.
All right, so we're cheating a little bit, and this isn't necessarily the first thing you've ever written.
Oh,
this
man,
is like the first thing you showed to us when Judo Range
this
started.
was an early Judo Range sketch, yeah.
That I don't think we ever did.
No, yeah.
I kind of think we should have at least
We
tried it.
should do it again. I was saying, yeah, I do like this sketch, and I did eventually want to do it, but there was like the great group. I just
Camp Woods.
Camp
We were
Woods, the
talking about,
fantastic
yes.
Camp Woods. who are still probably much better writers than I could ever be, did a sketch that it wasn't quite the same, but it was kind of like, it was like a bunch of kids playing with Power Rangers action figures. And while they're playing with the figures, other members of the team would be enacting it as if it was actually happening. Mm-hmm. And one of the action figures was just one of the kids' dad. And the other kids were like, wait, no, your dad's no hero. He can't be part of it. And, like, it felt not too similar, but, like, one of the things
but
was
enough
like,
that,
well,
like,
if one of the greatest, like, sketch groups currently in the city does.
You don't want to be
the same topic.
Yeah, you don't want to be the group that has the second Power Rangers parody.
Yeah,
or, like,
yeah. Or, and I don't know if you remember this, but... And this sketch I probably never would have been able to do because it was a little too prop heavy or whatever you want to say. I pitched like a Christmas Carol sketch, literally like around the same Christmas the Camp Wizards did that great like Mad Men sketch.
Right. Okay.
Anyway,
so where did this idea come from?
I guess I just liked the idea of like in a like a Power Rangers or a Planeteers type situation, like one of those bad shows from the '90s where like
Hold on, don't slag off.
One of those like teams of kids who all get recruited by some otherworldly force at the same time, and I just thought it would be funny if one of them was just not on board at all.
Right.
And just like, whoa, I didn't agree to this. I didn't agree to fight.
What am I
monsters.
doing here?
I don't want to do this. I'm just friends with everybody else. I don't want to fight. Something like that.
All right, so this isn't your first sketch. Do you have any memories of what your first sketch really would have been, or like, or even why you wrote it?
They were all so long ago. I want to say maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. I started comedy doing stand up, and I was like, not a terrible stand up, but I would look back on it. I was kind of hacky. I was like, and then like. And for whatever reason, I just was kind of like, man, I really don't feel like doing stand-up anymore. I don't really feel like hanging out at, not to shit on stand-ups, but hanging out at bars at like 1 a.m. every night. And then like, so Dan Vetrano had this sketch show that he was given to, I think because he knew people at Taboo. And what happened where it was, and him and I were even back then kind of writing partners when it came to stand-up. And we ran a bunch of mics together, and he was like, we should do sketches at this Taboo show I have, and it was weird because it ended up being called Sketch Playground. Okay. But the only sketch that ever happened were the ones we would write and do between the acts, and there was usually like a stand-up, a couple improv groups, and maybe occasionally another sketch group, and and the sketches, because we were stand-ups trying to do sketch. And the sketches we wrote back then were not good. It was like, if I remember correctly, like we were not exactly sketch playground was not exactly looked lovingly upon by the sketch community. No, it was not very well liked. We did a couple pretty damn hacky sketches. A couple of them were good, but a couple of them were pretty damn hacky. The first one, it was like we did one. I don't think it was my premise. I think it was Dan's premise, but it was about like somebody would rate restaurants based on how good the glory hole at that restaurant was.
What's the timeline for this? Because I don't really remember this.
This would have been like 2010, 2011.
Okay, so
this
it was
many pre-Judo Range and all that.
Yeah.
It was before I was really embedded in the sketch community. So the first one I ever really remember doing with Dan, and there's a whole backstory to this sketch. There's a lot of funny incidences in this sketch. It was one, I had a sketch idea that I thought was way too inappropriate to actually perform the way I wrote it, where it was two people, and this is a hacky premise looking back on it, two people were like about to shoot up a school, two of the students, or it was going to be one of the students and like the principal, and they were both about to walk into a school with like tote bags filled with guns, and they're like about to walk in at the same time, and they're just like, what are you doing? And you're like, I'm shooting up the school. What are you shooting? And he was like, I'm shooting up the school. And like, wait a minute, you can't shoot up the school. I'm shooting up the school. And they just get in an argument where it's like, oh, I'll tell you what, I'll shoot it up today, and then you can shoot up tomorrow. And the guy's like, well, okay, now wait a minute. It was just this very dumb, hacky premise. And
did you ever do that?
No. In a way, we did it. I changed it so that it wasn't so terribly offensive and hacky, but it's still, so the way I changed it was that instead of two school shooters it was like two like serial killers straight out of like a horror movie.
Yeah.
Who like were gonna kill a bunch of people at like a slumber party. A common
that sounds more
killing
familiar.
ground.
Like that sounds a little bit better.
It was a bit of a skewering of 80s slashes, which I've always
Right.
been a fan of. And looking back on that sketch, we liked it, but I don't even know if it was good because, I mean, the audience seemed to be kind of into it, but so there's a weird, very strange backstory. I looking back, and it might have even been kind of sexist, I feel like, maybe, but like about as sexist as 80s slashers actually are. So maybe it wasn't, but it just seemed that way because
you might have been making a commentary.
Yeah,
about it.
yeah. And we were killing we were going to kill a bunch of cheerleaders at a slumber party. And the weirdest thing about this sketch is I don't know why we thought this was a good idea. We didn't have prop like butcher knives, so we just used like real knives. And it's funny, like, I think if I remember correctly, I just moved out of an apartment in like Chestnut Hill or something like that, and I still had all this shit in my car, and and Dan was like, well, we don't have prop knives, what are we going to do? And I was just like, Dan was like, well, we'll get butter knives from the bar, and I was like, that's not going to look like weapons from a horror movie, that's going to look like butter knives.
So let's grab.
Fred, Mike Myers doesn't use a butter knife, no. And then I was like, listen, I have these, I think I might have some knives in my car. And it's funny because out of the two knives we used, the one Dan had, people probably couldn't tell this. It looked like the knife that like Michael Myers uses in the movies, and it couldn't cut butter. It was like very dull. The tip was actually broken off. It wasn't actually dangerous. And the knife I was using was very dangerous. And like I remember as I was unsheathing it, like because it had a sheath. Which is a sign of a sharp knife. I was like, I cut my hand when I was unsheathing it, or like a finger, and it still didn't cross my mind like, oh, this is a sharp knife. I shouldn't do this.
This is not a prop.
Yeah, I could have even just kept it in the sheath. I don't know why I didn't. And like, I mean, I've used fake knives in sketches since. Like, I remember there was one in it, or I'm sorry, real knives since. Like, there was an Alley of Nightmares thing where somebody had to use a real like sling blade, but again, it was in no way used in a dangerous way. It wasn't really held up to anybody in a dangerous way. But in the sketch we did, there was a part where Dan, with his knife, pretended to fake stab, I think Corinne Wells or somebody playing one of the teenage girls.
Oh, my gosh.
And at the end, I pretended to fake stab Dan with my knife that was very dangerous. And it was funny because before we did it, I feel like, not that, of course, it's all our faults. It's on nobody else but us. But, like, before we did it, like, a bunch of other people who were putting the show together were like, oh, you guys use real knives? You're like, yeah. And people would be like, well, that seems maybe like you shouldn't. And nobody was ever just like, don't do that. People were just kind of like, oh,
it was just like, oh, that might be a bad idea.
And then afterwards, everybody was like, that was a terrible idea. And I was like, how should we know? We had never taken sketch classes. I assume in Sketch 101,
Sketch
they
101,
tell
the first
you,
rule, don't use real knives.
Use real knives. No, but it's definitely one of the oddities of like my early sketch days, making that dumb decision. And I remember, I think we liked the sketch, and we were putting on like a many years later, like Sketch Playground ran for maybe 2, maybe even more years. But I eventually kind of stopped doing it with them because I got. But we decided to do like I guess Dan wanted to do a best of at Latage after they stopped doing it Taboo because it wasn't working. And Dan was like, oh, we should do that sketch. Remember how much we liked it? And I was like, yeah, but I feel like people remember it more for the fact that we used real
Or the
knives
actual murder weapons on stage.
For whether or not the sketch was actually good. So I was like, let's not do that sketch just in case people have bad memories.
All right, let's go all the way to the back. What were you into growing up? Like, what made you laugh?
Oh, sketch one. Like
not even sketch.
My inspirations.
Like, what?
Oh man, I watched a lot of. It's funny because I had a fairly sketch comedy upbringing. Like when I was a kid, I remember during the summer they would play on Comedy Central Kids in the Hall during the daytime, and so when I was home, I would watch Kids in the Hall from a very young age. 90s SNL, I would always watch the reruns when they would rerun it on like Comedy Central and stuff like that. So 90s SNL was a big one. A lot of like maybe Mr. Show later on, The Simpsons, Space Ghost, Mystery Science Theater, like those kind of like out there oddball. A lot of oddball shows that maybe weren't quite mainstream.
Like
I mean, of course, The Simpsons and SNL were mainstream, but a lot of it wasn't.
Who would be your favorite SNL cast member?
Oh man, that's so hard. I don't know, like in general or what based on what they've done on SNL.
Ever. Doesn't matter.
Dang, I don't know. I would be tempted to say Bill Hader because he's very funny, but I don't know how regularly I watched the show when he was on. Andy Samberg's also very underrated. I feel like he gets a bad rap for I don't know. What would you say, for being too mainstream or something like that? But he's if you look at his like catalog, like the Lonely, he's a great writer, as is the rest of Lonely Island. If I had to say from when I was a kid, that would be much more difficult. From when I started watching it, I would actually maybe say Al Franken, because I used to love Stuart Smalley.
Right. See, like, and I have no point of reference for Stuart Smalley at all.
Oh my God.
Like, I just know that one clip of him with Jordan. Like,
that was
I ever watched like a
sketches.
full Stuart Smalley sketch.
There's some good ones.
Nor have I ever seen the movie.
Oh my God, that's
is the movie worthwhile?
You know what? I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I used to love it as a kid. But I remember liking it as a kid, and as an adult, I've actually heard that it's one of the more underrated SNL movies from like film and SNL fans and stuff like that. And I remember going back, one of my favorite Stuart Smalley sketches was one that came out like the week after the movie came out. And it's funny because it's him in character as Stuart Smalley complaining that his movie didn't do well. And he's just, I think Beavis and Butthead or something beat it out at the box office. And he's just being very, because he's supposed to be a very calm, character, but he's secretly also very passive aggressive. And so he'd just be like, no, it's great. No, yeah, people wanted to see foul-mouthed teenagers instead of my movie that I worked very hard on. Instead of my movie that Siskel and Ebert gave 2 thumbs up. That's fine.
He, I know him more because, I mean, he's been on the show forever, like on and off, and he would do like these talking heads on Update.
Yeah, and his writing partner, whose name escapes me, Tom
Davis.
Yes, Tom Davis.
They did a sketch, and I can't find it. I know it exists. I know it's a thing where it's an alternate universe where the Native Americans still controlled America.
Okay, I do know. I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
they're doing commentary on like a Major League Lacrosse. And all the team names are racial slurs for white people, and it's hilarious.
That's great,
and it's so like,
wasn't it from
it's like
the 70s, right? Because I've seen pictures of
like
them
first or
dressed
second
up.
season. It is early, and they're like talking about like the Boston Mix and like all these other ones that are just like
that is very funny.
But then he also does like the me generation, or it's the me decade. Me, Al Franken. That whole like catchphrase that he had.
Oh yeah. I probably know him more for his 90s stuff than his like 70s stuff, because I've gone back and watched some 70s SNL, and it's funny because my parents always talked very fondly of it. But if you watch a whole episode, it's strange because there's like, people criticize SNL these days, just like, oh, a lot of the sketches aren't even that good, but there's a lot of like just dead air in the 70s episodes. There's a lot.
Like a lot of people do hold those like 70s episodes, but looking back at them as someone that didn't live in that era, like, what is happening with some of this stuff? Like,
I remember.
They do the bees a lot, and I don't think it always works. Like, there's a lot of times where it doesn't
sketches,
work.
Yeah, that doesn't even sound that. That premise doesn't even sound that funny. A lot of those premises are just like not even super clever. Like what was it? The samurai.
Yeah,
the samurai. It's like it's finally remembered. But I've watched those sketches where it's like, this is a very one-note premise.
It's one joke.
It's a
over
samurai
and over again.
who has different jobs. I remember I used to like when I was a kid that for some reason that makes me think of one-note sketches. There was a sketch in 90s SNL where it was like a Greek restaurant that made like what's the thing I'm trying to think of, the Greek sandwich?
The gyro.
And they made gyros, and everybody liked the sauce, and people would be like, can I have some extra sauce? And then I think it was Rob Schneider or somebody as the guy at the counter would lean in and be like
really super sexual.
Yeah,
like
it is. Yeah, he would like lean in and be like, you like it sauce. And he would just keep saying that. And it was a fairly funny sketch the first time around. And then the second time that they did it, near the end, Lorne Michaels just walks on set and he's like, I don't think we need to keep doing this. And I used to love it when they would do that. They did that a couple times. Like, do you remember Colin Quinn had a reoccurring sketch where it would be like, I remember there was one where it was a guy in the crowd. It would be a guy in the crowd of like Hitler. Hitler was at like Hitler's famous speech when he first started, I don't know, gaining power. And he's just a guy in the audience it's basically just Colin Quinn just be like, I don't know about this guy. It would be a guy being critical of like some sort of historical figure, and he was in the audience. And they did it a couple times, and one time they're doing the sketch, and then they cut to Lorne Michaels in like the directing room or whatever you would call it, and he's standing next to Tracy Morgan, and they're both just kind of like, maybe we didn't need to do this sketch again. I love it when they have those kind of moments on SNL.
I think it's weird that like Colin Quinn was on the show for like 4 years.
Yeah. I was a fan of Colin Quinn.
I liked his.
Oh man, you know what? That
his
reminds
updates.
me. I might actually. My favorite member. I maybe would have to change it to Norm Macdonald. I was a big Norm fan when he was on.
Yeah, he's been coming up a lot recently.
Yeah. I love his stand-up.
There was I don't know if you saw this or if Saturday Night Live. I mean, Rolling Stone did a list of the greatest cast members of all time.
Yeah.
And I say Rolling Stone, but it was actually Rob Sheffield. Like, he's the one that wrote the entire thing.
I hated that list.
And,
I remember reading
and Norm
it.
Macdonald's like 140 something out of 144.
Yeah.
Like,
it's funny because on that list, there's like a bunch of members who are weirdly higher up for some reason, and they're people that nobody remembers. That list, and like Robert Downey Jr. was like 90 something.
Well, no, I think Robert Downey Jr. was dead last. I think he was like, for whatever reason.
That was such an interesting year. There's a documentary that came out somewhat recently where, and they would air it on Sundays on NBC a few years back, where each hour of the documentary would focus on a different era of SNL.
Right.
And there's an era where they're talking about the singular year, 85.
Right.
Do you remember? So in the Lorne Michaels left. I don't know all this history. I still have to read that book all about.
Come on.
But I have to read that book. But Lorne Michaels left in the early 80s, and what's his name took over? Dick Ebersol.
Gene Domanion took over for the first season, which was awful, and then Ebersol took over for the next 4.
Yeah, and they're terrible. And I remember as a kid, because I would watch reruns, and around that, when I was maybe like 12 or so, after SNL, they started playing old SNL episodes, and watching the one from the 80s with Joe Piscopo and Eddie Murphy, outside of those two, are so bad. And a couple years later, they started playing reruns of SCTV, and I started to love SCTV because SCTV is kind of known for being like the Saturday Night Live superior when Saturday Night Live was on in the 80s. And it would come on after SNL, and it was like way better. And my parents, I remember when I was a kid, would tell me they would stay up after SNL just to watch SCTV.
So now that we've talked about Saturday Night Live for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Which is perfectly fine. What drives you to do stand-up? You start as a stand-up.
Oh, yeah.
What was your impetus to get on stage that first time?
Oh, boy. It's like a couple weird reasons. I remember when I was in college, my friends would tell me that, oh, you should do stand-up. And it was which is what everybody's friends tell them.
There's always
this
that
is
one
my
funny
funny
guy in the
friend.
group.
But it's how often are they actually funny? And my friends would be like, you should do stand-up. And I wanted to do it. And I graduated college, and I never did until a year later. I was going to grad school and I was living in a place in Chestnut Hill and I was just I don't remember what made me want to do it, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do stand-up. And there was a stand-up class being taught at Helium Comedy Club.
Was that the
what do they call it? Philly
Brad
Comedy
Trackman?
Academy?
Was that?
Yes.
Okay.
So
you did the class?
I was such a for some reason I thought I should take the class. I would have to take the class if I was going to be good at stand-up or something like that. And I took it and never did stand-up until the class ended, and then I did it at the graduation shows, which are always actually pretty good because it's everybody's friendly family and friends, and I liked it. And then I started doing mics pretty regularly, and I think I took that comedy academy class a couple times because I believed in it very much at that time. And it's not. You don't have to take it. You don't need to take it. You don't need to take it.
If I'm not mistaken,
it's kind of looked down upon by actual good students.
And I don't want to slag the dude off, but I think that Trackman class at Helium has been on Groupon
oh yeah,
every
cool.
week since the last couple weeks. So if you want to spend $20
really
on Groupon instead of whatever it was,
used to be pretty expensive.
That's what I'm saying.
It used to be pretty.
I think the price has gone down
unjustifiably
significantly.
expensive.
So all right, and then you and Dan start working.
And then
together.
that's right. So then Dan and I actually met Dan. I think it was the summer of 2010 when I started doing stand-up regularly.
Okay.
And I met Dan almost immediately at an open mic at Taboo. And then he and I just basically every week would hit all the mics. And then after this is kind of embarrassing. After really only doing stand-up for not even 6 months, and both of us, it would be generous to say after doing stand-up for 6 months that we were mediocre. Would be generous.
Oh.
And we made the mistake of starting an open mic when we were only like very new at comedy, and it was bad. It was at this place that nobody ever went to called we called it Comedy on the Grill because the place, it was on 20th and Ludlow, right by the stock market, and it was this little black box bar that had no business, and we ran a stand-up show there for like a little under a year, I think, and stand-ups would come out because, stand-ups were all about hidden mics no matter what. So stand-ups would still come, but it was mostly usually just a stand-up audience. So we would have fun and just kind of do whatever we wanted. But then then another mic got started by Carolyn Busen and Mary Radzinski also on a Monday night.
Right.
That was, and they're like by two actual good stand-ups who people respected.
That was the one in Fairmount, right?
Yes, at like an actual good bar that people liked going to. And that, not that I hold a grudge against them or anything like that, but that definitely took
But they scooped your heat.
Some
Gotcha.
people would hit us first and then go to them. And after doing stand-up for a year, I just, maybe a little more, like year and a half, I just kind of started to get tired of it, you have to have a certain, I think you have to really like doing stand-up to do stand-up because you have to be, hitting mics every night and all that kind of thing. And a couple things took the wind out of my sails. Like we stopped doing it there because the owner was like a really weird guy, and I think he might have been on drugs most of the time. And it started after doing it for a couple months. Sometimes he straight up just wouldn't show up. It would be like 7:30 at night, and we would get to. I mean, he kept changing the name because he would try and get business. Like he eventually changed it to like Exchange, and anyway to like the stock market. And sometimes we would get there, and like the mail would be in front of the door, and it would be locked.
Oh my gosh.
And we decided to stop doing it because one night we didn't want to disappoint the comedians, so we were just like, oh hey, we'll just do it outside, and we did it at that little corner, outside corner with benches, out near the stock market. And then after that, we kind of stopped doing it, and then. Shortly thereafter, through Paul Goodman, he doesn't really do stand-up much anymore, but he was a really nice guy. He was like a dentist who did stand-up, and he had a connection at, what was this, Mike? King's Oak in Northern Liberties. I think it's closed now.
Okay.
And so we ran this mic there for a while that was legitimately like a lot of fun. It was good. But it was around the time I was considering not doing stand-up anymore, and like always got a great audience because it was in the Piazza. But and that mic ended very badly, and it kind of took the wind out of my sails because it was like, and I think that's what made me not really want to do stand-up anymore because it was going fine for about 2 months, and then the owner was just kind of like, Monday night football, we want to do sports, because there was like a very big disagreement between the owner and another stand-up. He had like a TV on during the stand-up to Monday Night Football,
which is not
and,
okay.
And of course, this stand-up got a little heated about it, and was like, "Hey, you can't have a TV on." He's like, "Well, it's just one TV in the corner." It's like, "Well, it's still distracting." Yeah, sports are like the bane of open mics. They're like, because people don't understand that they will distract the audience. And around that time, I was like, I don't really want to do stand-up anymore, and I felt a little bad because I think Dan and I had a lot of disagreements about it. I think since we started together, I think he was upset that I was stopping it. And it's funny because shortly thereafter, a good maybe 6 months after I kind of stopped regularly doing stand-up, he called me and he was like, "Hey, I'm going to start running the open mic at Exchange again, the Black Box Bar." And he's like, you want to do it? You want to do it again? And he was like, what? And I remember saying like, "Well, is there a different manager?" And he was like, "No, it's the same guy." And I was like, "Well, no, I don't want to do it." But Dan and I have always worked. We've had our disagreements, but we've always worked very well together. And I remember telling him this the other week, and we did a sketch show at Good like a month back that we were pretty proud of. And I remember saying to him afterwards, like, it's funny that all those years ago, we just were putting out so much bad content, and now we're still working together and, doing stuff that we're mostly proud of. We still have. So
as you transition to sketch, do you do any of the sketch classes, or do you just
go
right in?
That's the thing, because what started me in sketch was just as a stand-up doing sketches at the Dan's Taboo show, and that was basically my introduction into sketch. I basically learned by mistake. Or, what do they call it? Learn. And that's kind of how I learned it, how to do sketch. And we did that for like we did that for a good couple months, and by the time, and then I transitioned into like other sketch groups like Judo Range, and by that time I was kind of just like, I don't know if I have to take a sketch class. I've been doing it.
Right.
I still, looking back on it, should have, because I still wasn't great at sketching. I always wanted to take a sketch class at Fit, and the few times I was like gonna sign up, it would sell out or something like that. So I never took a sketch class.
All right, so you and I work together on Judo Range. How does that process happen for you? Like
the Judo Range process?
Yeah, like were you part of that first Judo Range show? Like
no, that's fun. I wasn't actually. I was not part of that.
Whoever was involved in that was in the summer.
It's a little murky that. So I was in another sketch group with Matt J. that kind of came out of Sketch Playground. In fact, we did. Okay. I guess I probably did one of my first full set. It was this group called Mini Boss, and Matt J. met because we met at one of the Taboo shows, Matt J. and I, and we were just like, oh, let's start a sketch group, and it was like myself, Tom Whitaker, and Matt J. And we all kind of had nerdy interests, so we were like, we'll call ourselves Mini Bots and do nerdy sketches, which, looking back on it, I'm not a fan of necessarily, like, pandering to one crowd, like the nerd crowd or anything like that. But at the time, I think we, like, tried to write mostly video game sketches or something like that. But it just didn't work out because there was a lot of clashings, maybe, of egos and stuff like that. And so that broke up pretty quickly, and I think Judo Range kind of came out of that. I think. I think you took a sketch class with Matt J.
Yeah, Matt J. and I did the master class with Kevin Allison, and a bunch of other people were involved in that class. And then after that class, I don't know. I don't remember who all was in the email, and I'm sure if actually I can probably go into my Gmail and find it. And, and see who all was sent this email. But I got an email one day like, "Hey, let's do a sketch show." But there were names on the list that weren't in the class.
I assume mine was one of them.
You were there, Ian Bafflor. A couple other people that I didn't know yet, and we met, I think, at Ian's place.
Yep. Yeah. I believe he still lives there. That's cool. Anyway,
I don't think he does anymore. I think he just moved.
Oh, I'm wrong.
But like in December of
2012.
I think it's 11.
Wow, that was 20. Okay, that does make more sense.
And then slowly, like a lot of people came to that first thing, and then I think we basically got that 6 or 7 that we became.
Yeah.
And then we spent like 3 weeks meeting at that storefront on South Street that had no electricity. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah, Space.
Like on
I forget there was a name. It was a very weird. It was a strange place. Yeah.
Yeah, with no electricity. So we're
no electricity.
We're writing sketches in the dark.
And it was run by a woman who I think was an artist, but she was a little strange. And sometimes people would just literally walk in, and she would be like, "Is it okay if I totally forgot about that until you brought that? I totally forgot about that whole place until you brought it up." And the woman running it was a little strange, and people would just come in while we were having writing sessions, and she would say, like, "Is it okay if she sits in on this writing session?" It's like, "No, these are strangers.
We're not a showpiece for you."
About that. Man, that was very strange. Yeah, but I think Manny Petty did like a show there.
I think
shortly
she eventually
after that,
did
people
get
started doing shows regularly there.
So, all right, Judo Range lasts for about 9 months, 10 months or so. Pro Mania happens, and then basically Judo Range splits up.
Yeah, well, it was like Judo Range. I had fun with Judo Range. I think we did some really fun sketches and some fun shows, but it was like, I remember in the beginning, because it kind of came out of that class you guys all took with Kevin Allison.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a situation where I remember I was wary at first, because I can always be a little wary about groups coming out of classes, like improv groups or sketch groups. And we had a lot of fun, and I did like that group, but sometimes it felt like, I don't know, there was not like too many cooks, if that makes sense, and there was like a lot of different voices. And I know there was like, I don't know, I feel like there was some falling outs. No, we don't have to talk about
falling outs.
There was not among, and like I remember what happened. Yeah, and like there was some falling outs. I won't get too much into detail. And some people, unfortunately, like some things happened where people in the group felt like unwelcome in the sketch group. Just a couple different things happened.
Yeah.
And after a while, Colette and I had been writing sketches together, and we just were kind of like, maybe we should leave. It felt like the group was kind of breaking up, and Colette and I made the decision to
I distinctly remember this, and so we'll talk about this. We were going to meet at a Starbucks somewhere. Like I think it was on South Street, and I think it was just you, me, and Chris Coletta. to start.
Oh yeah, okay, I think you're right.
And you guys were like I don't know if I'm looking back and like making the joke about it, but like that's when you guys were breaking up with me. Like,
no, I was about
like,
to say, yeah.
Like you guys were like, hey, this is clearly not going to be a thing in the next month, but Chris and we're just gonna work together as a duo. And I was just like, okay.
Yeah,
like,
it was funny because I remember. I forgot that's when we told you, but I remember we told everybody else because we wanted to be big about it. We wanted to like, tell people in person and that kind of thing. And like, it was a meeting at Ian's and we were just like, and there was a lot of things that went into that decision, but we were just like, hey, I think we're just going to split off. And it felt bad because people were like, what, really? And like, I don't know, it seemed like a couple things weren't working out, but like, people and it this is a dumb thing to say, but it seemed like a breakup. It seemed like a breaking up with like a
and like there's certain things I remember it and understand. Like I think you guys lived pretty close to each other, so like or like
maybe
or like closer than because I know you were commuting into Philadelphia
back then.
Lot.
I think I was living outside the city.
So you and Coletta split off and become Coletta McGrail?
We just called ourselves Coletta McGrail. Yeah.
And so were you originally part of Goat Rodeo? Now that I'm
yes.
So you were part of the original group of like But so was Chris, wasn't he? Wasn't Coletta as well?
No, that was a whole. So yeah, Coletta and I worked together we had our sketch group going for I feel like a little under a year. Coletta and I really liked working with him, but I think we kind of faded. We burnt out pretty quickly.
Right.
I don't know if he feels this way, but I realized that being in a duo is difficult. Like when we left a whole group and then we're just a duo, there was this immediate realization that I had where I first realized that as much as I like writing, I'm a little lazy. And then like, when it comes to rehearsing and everything else, and there was just this realization of like, oh man, it's only two people doing everything. That's a lot harder than a whole group of people. Like you have to be on stage the whole time.
Because as you say that, and me thinking back to it, like I'm not gonna say that you're lazy, but you are two very different people.
Oh man, yeah.
Like
I feel I loved working with.
You're
Coletta.
both extremely funny.
Yeah.
Your ideas are generally like out there and weird.
Yeah.
I think he's a bit more grounded. Like you have like two very diametrically different people, which could work great.
Yeah, I think it's funny because Coletta McGrail, I loved working with him. He was a good friend, but like I feel like we were both in a weird place when we were working together. Like we were, I think we were both working very sporadically, looking for better employment. Like that, just like in weird places in our life that might have affected the group. And like, it was fun working with him, but I feel like I might have been kind of a jerk back then. I feel like looking back, I could be a jerk about like I was very protective of sketches, and I was very like, no, it has to be. You have to read it this way, like everything.
Right.
I was a little. I mean, in any sketch group, that's another thing I realized about being in a duo. In any sketch group, somebody has to be in charge, and neither of us liked being in charge. And I feel like I sometimes was forced because somebody had to be in charge, and I feel like I could be a dictator at times. I think I'm less of one now, but like I was a little bossy with Coletta McGrail. But no, I think for a number of reasons we burned out pretty quickly. We only were a group for maybe a little under a year, but in that year we had some sketches that we really liked. We had some sketches we really liked.
I mean, there's sketches from the Judo Range. I mean, your ideas, and like this even goes now to the current Goat Rodeo, like the last Goat Rodeo show, because like I'm pretty sure that last sketch was you.
Oh yeah,
originally like
sketch. Yeah.
Like just watching, I was like, oh, this is McGrail all over it. Like, this is like his fingerprints are like literally everywhere.
You can definitely always tell me. If there was like a blind reading of like, I don't know, Goat Rodeo sketches or any group I've been in, it would be like, this is the McGrail sketch.
But like even back in the Judo Range, like, and I don't remember this because I wasn't there for this trip. You guys went on a trip to PAX East.
Yeah, that's kind of how Coletta and I started,
And you guys did McGrail Shaving Corner.
Yeah.
Which is the dumbest thing on earth, but it made us laugh to no end, no matter how many times we did it.
Oh, man, I loved that sketch. We only did... I almost forgot about that one, So I guess if I had to summarize the sketch, it was like I had a big beard back then, and so I had to maintain it and everything. And so I was a talk show host that had a show about shaving.
Right.
And the lights would, and this 2-minute video of me shaving in front of a mirror, like maybe even more than 2 minutes, 2-3 minute video.
This like beautiful slow motion.
Yeah, with great music to it.
Like
very well made video of me shaving in front of a mirror, and then the lights would come up and it'd be like, "Welcome to McGrail's Shaving Corner." I think it was Mike Dieva who played the special guest, or somebody who had a question or something. It was like, "Welcome to McGrail's Shaving Corner. I give people advice on how to shave. Is there any questions?" And Dieva would say like, "Yeah, what do you what's best to use to shave?" And then I would say shaving cream, and then black out, and then the stupid video would just play all over
again because the video just made us laugh.
Yeah. But people liked that sketch. People told, and it was actually Coletta's idea. It was his sketch, and people would tell us we should film it. And I think Coletta and I, again, we were both very protective of sketches, and we were just like, I don't think it needs to be filmed. But yeah, and there was even like a sequel to Coletta's.
The sequel is awful.
That did not go well.
Bombed entirely because I was in it.
Yeah,
and I just remember like, oh, this is not okay.
Which I believe Coletta also wrote the sequel, and the sequel was it was like
you weren't there.
I was sick,
there was a guest
and it was
host.
Coletta filling in for me, and it was just him like insulting me.
I think he insulted me like for like a minute,
funny.
but
yeah.
Now
I did like McGrail Shaving Corner, and that actually came out of that PAX weekend. So we all liked video games and that kind of thing, but like
except for me.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's why. And it was like me, Ian, Mike, and we all went. And Coletta, I don't really like crowds, and of course it's super crowded. And Coletta and I just really weren't super into it because it was so crowded, and you had to wait in line just to play one game demo. And so Coletta and I really just ended up getting drunk the whole time, and. Because I brought like a bunch of liquor with me, and we were drunk the whole time. Which Jake, because he loves video games, was like, "Why would you just come to get drunk?" And I was like, "Well, we're having fun." And then like we were just drunk the whole time, and that's kind of when we realized that our comedy sensibilities meshed very well. But that sketch specifically, I remember it was like 1 a.m. We were both pretty hammered, and we were like, we should probably go over to the convention center. And he just filmed me like drunkenly shaving in a mirror. One day, and then like 2 or 3, like many weeks later, he was like, "Look at this," and he showed it to me. And I was like, "What the hell? Like, what do you exactly?" And it was like the video with like the music and the intro, and everything. And I was like, "What exactly do you plan to do with this?" And he was like, "I have this sketch called McGrail Shaving Corner," and it was a great sketch. It was very funny. Yeah.
All right, so and then you get into Goat Rodeo. You were in the original group.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you submitted for that?
I do. I submitted like. I hope this doesn't make anybody mad at me, but it was like it was 3. So when you submit to Go Rodeo, and I think it's still the same with sketch groups these days, you would submit 3 sketches and 3 premises, I believe, and it was 3 full sketches, and the rule was that like. You had to have written all the sketches yourself, which I did not abide by that because it's like I've barely ever write sketches by myself. As I remember, Rick Moranis once saying on the Nerdist podcast when he was on, he said like I always have an editor, and I kind of always try to follow that. So I always, most of my sketches I asked for other people's advice on, but I submitted 3 Coletta and McGrail sketches that I wrote most of. Like I had pitched.
You were the original first draft.
Did the outline and all that, and then that guy, and I asked Coletta's permission before.
You're gonna get kicked off Goat Rodeo.
What if after literally almost
Sam's gonna hear this no more
after 3.5 years of Goat Rodeo that I think for the most part I've been pretty good on the team, and after like 3.5 years she's just like, nope, sorry, it's the principle of the thing, you're off the team. You lied, you're off the team. Like, but Sam, I thought we were no, but like it was 3 Coletta McGrail sketches that I was pretty fond of. Got me on Go Rodeo. And then, I was a writer, and I ended up being an actor, but that wasn't my initial intention.
Right. I feel it's the case for most of the Fit House teams is that, like, it starts as a writer section and an actor section, and then eventually they just, like, coalesce into, one big group.
I wasn't forced, but I remember Sam, we were having actor auditions, and I don't think I was going to act because I was just like, oh great, I can just write, because I kind of still to this day get very nervous on stage. I was like, I don't have to act, that's great, I won't. And then when we were reading during the auditions, Sam was like thinking of who we were going to cast, and she was like, I think Aubrey Williams and Aaron Herzog were both like, well, we'd like to act if we can as well. And Sam was just like, oh, yeah, you both can totally, of course you can be on the acting team. And she was like, and Chris, I like the way you read sketches, so you're going to act too. And I was like, I didn't want to be like, no, I don't want to, I didn't want to be like, no, I'm not going to act. I ended up being an actor as well.
So you go Rodeo, you're working with Dan again, on and off when things happen.
You know what? And he was cast on Dog Mountain at the time as an actor.
Was he really?
Yeah, which I never wanted to make a big fuss about it, but I kind of want to be like, no, put him on this team. I work well with him.
So why comedy? What got you to do it? What made you want?
I don't know.
Why
I guess
do
it was
you still do it? Like,
I'd be like, why do I still do it? My answer might be kind of sad.
I mean, even just in the time that we worked together, there was enough tumultuous things that I stepped away from comedy for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Like,
to be fair, over the over the years that I've been doing it, I have sporadically stepped away from it here and there. I guess the main reason I still do it is I don't have anything better to do. I feel like I once was having this conversation with, I believe, either Dan Corky or Paul Trigg, maybe both of them, where they were just saying, like, and we were talking about this, and they were like, well, what else are we doing? What else are we, like, it's just like, this is all I know now. Yeah. And, like, most of my, whether or not this is kind of sad, most of my close friends are, like, other comedy people.
In the scene,
yeah. So it's just like, yeah, I don't know what I'd do if I didn't just do this.
And then finally, you've been doing this for a while, and you've never taken the classes, so like you don't know like the clinical approach to it that they kind of teach you in the class.
Probably now I kind of do.
But like, do you have any advice or anything that you've learned from comedy that you would pass on to someone just getting into it?
I don't know. I mean, like any kind of comedy.
Yeah.
You don't need to take a stand-up class, but you should take an improv class if you're going to improvise, because those are very good. And you should probably take a sketch class too. And I don't know, just get to know people, make some friends in the scene immediately.
Did you ever do any of the improv classes?
I did. I actually I believe I've actually taken up to and including 301 at the FIT.
So who? Okay, so wait, let's stop there. Who? 101.
Mike. Oh, it's gonna sound so mean that I can't remember his full name. Mike Hockman.
Okay, 201.
Ralph Andraccio.
3.
Steve Kleinendler.
Okay. So
and I believe I took all of them. Maybe I paid for the first one, but I believe I actually buddied all of them once I was on Go.
Right.
I kind of did a backwards type thing where it's like, once I get good enough to be on a team, then I'll start taking the classes for free.
When you get those company member perks, you might as well use
totally.
them.
Yeah.
All right, so you're saying to take the classes.
I think it's worth it to take. If you're going to do sketch, I would say take the classes, because I think it's fine in stand-up to learn by mistake, but it's kind of, I don't know. Looking back on it, it was a little awkward and clunky learning sketch by mistake, because there's a lot more rules, I feel like, to sketch than there are stand-up, and definitely for improv.
Yeah.
So I would say, take a sketch class. They're fun. And most of the people, I think everybody who teaches them are pretty cool people.
Yeah, it's a pretty good crew of teachers now at FIT.
Totally. All over the FIT and Good and all that.
Oh, yeah, Good too.
Good does sketch now, yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Chris will be seen next as a cast member in Locked in Julia's Basement when they kick off Philly Sketchfest along with It's the New and the Amazing Flying Edelman. April 20th at 7 p.m. at the Playground at the Adrian. Tickets are available at ticketfly.com. And if my math is correct, Goat Rodeo should be back on the FIT stage in June or July. My First Sketch is a Philly Sketchfest production. You can find out more information at phillysketchfest.com or on Twitter at PHLSketchfest. Also, for more information about comedy in Philly, head to watercooler.com. The music on this episode is by the band No No, which you can check out at nonoband.bandcamp.com. And of course, like My First Sketch on Facebook. This is Josh Hyam. Thanks for listening. Now go see some comedy.